The Art of Grandia, a role-playing game series spanning over 4 games, with the most popular one being the first. The series was developed by GameArts. You heard that right, GameArts, not this awesome channel of course, but the same company that made Lunar Silverstar story. And if you ever played that game, it might come to no surprise that the developers stated in an interview they want to make a living, breathable world, more in the sense of a musical theater play. The team wanted things to interact and feel immersive. Also, they tried to emphasize the show don't tell story concept, where the protagonist really is the protagonist, discovering the world together with the player. They didn't want to be typical medieval fantasy, nor a space sci-fi, but rather an adventure game, with a post-industrial revolution-like setting where people were eager to explore and discover. More like they had thoughts turned towards the future to prosper even further, as if something new is about to begin. This detail went into everything, even the towns. As for the characters, they made over 200 portraits to keep the expressions fresh throughout the story. This way, they wanted them to be realistic, good in nature characters, with highlights on their shortcomings so that the player could understand the situation and perspective. They focus on distinct personalities, so players of all ages could pick their favorite. And this way it will feel less robotic when the characters interact during dinner. Furthermore, the devs said they went all in on animation and spent most of their time on world building. By the way, as a fun fact, in the 97 interview, the game and story director also noted their thoughts on Final Fantasy VII. They simply said, the darker theme of FF7 is the total opposite of what they wanted Grandia to be. Not that they claimed one is better than the other, but just to note to the players that their game gave off a different vibe than Final Fantasy VII. While the first Grandia was more of an adventure game, Grandia 2 was nudging further towards character progression. The team decided to open up a competition to hire many concept artists to do the initial sketches. Ultimately, they decided to go for Yoshi Kanoe as the main artist. They said his work struck a nice balance between mature and comic relief, easily switching between the two. Design-wise, like in many love stories, the main character Ryudo is basically the opposite of Elena. While she is a believer and benevolent, he trusts only himself. That said, the developers indicated that the story revolves more on Elena's character progression than anything else. And as a non-spoiler if you didn't play it, she has a second personality, named Millennia. Well, like you may guess, she has the opposite characteristics. However, the devs noted that they on purpose didn't go all the way. This is also a non-spoiler, because the ritual of changing Elena was unsuccessful. However, the team did mention that this second personality also came in fruition because Elena was raised strictly and wanted to express her more free-spirited side, like a dormant personality which needed a less push to show itself. Despite so, the artist Yoshi Kanoe did mention that creating Millennia was the toughest, as the team was emotionally involved in this character. This aside, the creators enjoyed that the fanbase was divided who they liked more as a best girl, and referred that based on the polls, Millennia had an edge on this one. Interestingly, in the early concept design, both girls were officially separate, giving you as the player the choice which story to follow. There's also another girl in the story, Theo. She was an experimental concept to show how an artificial life form longs to be human, who was initially more of an additional character totally developed by one creator. So what about the rest of the bunch? Well, most were drawn by different character artists. The developers really want to explore all options for the best approach to get the most interesting design. Also, the main character artist said that for the final artworks, he was most inspired of adding insect designs in the clothing.
Sky, take flight!
This is, by far, my favorite line of the game.
Here goes! Flying Tensei Ken!
Actually, their tag phrases definitely add to the nostalgia. Anyways, the concept art design of Sky was also done by multiple artists, with the creators discussing a lot of what kind of supporting role he should have. Okay, character art aside, in the sense of world design, they went for a more natural landscape. and they tried to emphasize the beauty of nature. They wanted Grandia to be the name of a franchise, not a one-story series. Thus, they changed the world setting completely. In other words, they differentiated from the vibe of the first Grandia and their Lunar series, which let them explore more realistic adult themes throughout the story. This was also because they initially focused on the Dreamcast player base, which had an older demographic. In case of Grandia Extreme, Enix and Game Arts chose Kamui Fujiwara as their character designer. Actually, he was also responsible for illustrating Terra Enigma, an art style which I personally really like. However, this time he went for slightly more realistic proportions. Unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but there are barely any illustrations available. There is a strategy guide, however it literally contains the art I'm showing here. Next is Grandia 3, and it was published through Square Enix. The project was headed by director Hidenobu Takahashi, who previously served as the art director for Grandia 2. And he stated that the game would follow the series' themes of adventure, drama and dreams. A feel-good story, so to say. Moreover, they said they would continue in the direction of taking the series into a more adult sensibility, while still remaining an overall optimistic tone like in the first installment. In addition, they took the story high up in the sky, noting that they took the Wright brothers as inspiration. Character designs for the game was provided by Yo Yoshinari, whom had worked on the original Grandia before. However, also for this game, the art that was revealed to the public is on the short end of the stick, which might be because they went for a cinematic feel, trying to convey the game into a movie, which is more scenario based, using pre-made 3D models fitting the narrative. In other words, design is more important than illustration in most of these cases. Is there more for Grandia? Technically yes, but I don't think any of it is that much worth mentioning. Except that there is a guidebook and a visual library made during the golden years. I fancy light novel author G.P. Phillips, and personally I just love the Grandia 2 art. It has an excellent balance of being typical manga while still holding up realistic proportions.